Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a LEED Fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing a recently minted LEED Fellow. I can't wait to get to know Brittany Storm more. She's down in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area and just has a great green building journey we're going to unpack. So, Brittany, welcome to the podcast today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know a little bit of your background for our podcast listeners. If you would, kind of give us that origin. Where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Yeah, so I grew up in South Florida. I started my career in construction. My dad was a general contractor in South Florida, and he owned his own construction company. And he focused primarily on single-family, multi-million-dollar homes in Palm Beach. And I grew up on his project site. From a young age, I would walk these sites with him, and I even worked for him when I was in college. And I first went to college to get my degree in architecture, but I learned, thankfully, relatively soon after starting, that I have a love for architecture, but I don't have the heart for it. And you know how the saying goes, love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. And so for me, architecture started to feel more like a job than a passion. But I knew I wanted to be in the design and construction industry. So I got my bachelor's in urban and regional planning, and I got that from Florida Atlantic University, and later an MBA in sustainable business, focusing on sustainable development from Merrill First University.
Very cool. All right. So you got that construction background there with your dad, architecture, urban planning. When did sustainability or maybe even green buildings first show up, either in your studies or one of your first projects? When did that start showing up?
While I was in college, I learned about sustainable building. And from there on, I knew I wanted to be a part of the growing green building industry. I can recall in one class in one semester in my entire time in college, I had an urban planning professor who I think at the end of class briefly mentioned something about this program coming out called LEED and encouraged students to look into it more. And she didn't know much about it. And, this was before LEED was the sustainability buzzword that it is today. So I remember going home and learning more about, sustainability and its impact on design and construction of buildings. And it was in my further research that I discovered my passion. I remember taking a deep dive into LEED and green buildings in general. And there's my passion. That's what I want to do. And so while working for my dad, we started incorporating green building practices into his multi-million-dollar single-family homes that we worked on. And as you can imagine, sustainability was the least of our clientele's concerns, but we did it anyway. So as a part of our closeout documents, I would present clients with concepts and strategies that related to sustainability and potentially being able to achieve LEED certification for their home or other project that we were working on. And while our clients were interested in pursuing LEED, I taught myself the ins and outs of LEED certification process and essentially how to walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to LEED and all the other sustainability buzzwords. And thankfully, my dad believes in sustainability too. We actually took the LEED Green Associate exam together, the first of many LEED exams for me, but that was an exciting process to go through with him.
I heard that. That's so cool. I love that. Way to say, hey, but we did it anyway there with those homeowners. And I think you probably did rub off on them. Hopefully they kept up with a little green cleaning or green pest control or a little greener landscaping. Who knows, that green home maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know. I mean, and I think that's what everybody listening needs to realize is we each have a circle of influence, even if it might seem small. You never know. Okay, so that's where sustainability started happening. You mentioned your dad there, probably a great mentor. But Brittany, were there some other mentors along the way? Sometimes a mentor is someone you get to hang out with, have a meal with. They get to coach you. Sometimes it's just someone from afar that, maybe you like their work, you follow their work. Or I've had many on the podcast that didn't really have mentors. It was more their peers they learned from. But did you have any other mentors?
Yeah, I've had an excellent support system throughout my education and career, but my dad is the greatest mentor to me. He's the reason I got into design and construction. I remember telling my dad that I wanted to follow in his footsteps with the added sustainability twist. And he was very supportive. Like I said, we put the exam together, and then when working with him, we implemented a lot of sustainability practices into his company. And then, there's something he told me that has essentially been the basis of my career's trajectory. When I first started working with him, he shared 3 challenges that I would face in my chosen career. The first one, I was young at the time. Second, I was a woman in construction. And lastly, I was bringing a relatively new subject, sustainability, to the construction industry. And no pressure for that young female sustainability entrepreneur, right? He taught me to be confident and to be knowledgeable, but not a know-it-all. And he also shared these challenges with me so that I would understand that in order to be taken seriously as a leader and an advocate for sustainability, I would need to know sustainability inside and out. And thankfully, sustainability is forever evolving, and I never stop learning, and therefore my technical skills and knowledge continue to grow as well.
He really had some foresight there, and it sounds like you've overcome a lot of those challenges. I know there's still a little work to do there, but that's amazing. So a little more of a look back, right? You've put together this 15-plus year career, and we're going to get into it more in a minute, what's keeping you busy today. But one more look back. What are some of your proudest achievements?
What I have 2 that come to mind. So the first one was getting an MBA in sustainability. That was over 10 years ago when sustainability and LEED and other green building standards were in their infancy stages. And at the time, sustainability courses were pretty limited, which have completely changed now. And an MBA is an achievement in and of itself, but it's one of my proudest achievements because I can remember sharing what I was focusing on and telling people I was focusing on sustainable building development when people would ask what I was studying, and their responses of why or really that trend isn't going to go anywhere. And fast forward to now in the successful career I've made out of being a part of the green building industry, I kind of got the last laugh in that. I'm proud of myself for doing something outside of the box at the time and outside of my comfort zone and still having a job in the ever-changing sustainability field. And on top of that, I truly love what I do. And I don't think I've ever been lost in my career path. It kind of just flowed relatively seamlessly to get me to where I am today. And I'm proud of that. Also receiving the LEED Fellow designation. As you know, they don't just hand out that designation. It requires at least 10 years of exceptional LEED-related impacts in, I think, 4 areas of LEED. And that's the commitment. And I'm proud and honored to be recognized as a thought leader and a LEED Fellow.
It's a great club to be in. Somehow they let me in a few years ago, and no, you definitely deserve it. So talk about credentials, because for those listening that are building their green building careers and maybe have a LEED credential, you have to have had a LEED AP for at least 10 years to even be eligible for LEED Fellow, and it's peer nominated, and it's quite the process. But you mentioned some other credentials. I've seen your LinkedIn profile, Brittany. You got a lot of great credentials. So tell us about, after you and your dad passed the LEED Green Associate together, which is amazing, what made you want to go ahead and take some more LEED exams and later the WELL AP?
Sure. So I knew I wouldn't achieve my passion working for my dad's company and the type of clientele that he had. So I accepted a position at a construction company as their lead LEED construction project manager, focusing on upper education and outpatient healthcare centers. And while I was at that construction company, later on, I was approached by a sustainable building consulting firm, and they had asked if I was interested in being a sustainability consultant, helping design and construction achieve various green building certifications. And at the time, it felt like a big leap into the unknown, and a leap I'm glad I took, since then I've had the opportunity to work on some amazing and rewarding projects with some incredible project teams all over the world. And I've had to get all of those credentials that I have. So the LEED AP, BD+C, ID+C, and then fast forward to 2014 when the WELL building standard came out, having to get that credential, but also it was a passion of mine. So my passion for sustainability and construction and health and wellness were collided together into this one standard, the WELL building standard. I was drawn to how the design of a space and the selection of building materials, how they impact our well-being. And I've been pushing for healthy buildings and working with my dad in the early 2000s. That term 6 building syndrome, it's real. And personally, it's bothersome that we've gone so long with harmful chemicals in our indoor environment. So for me, my sustainability path started with specing low VOCs and reviewing submittal to low VOCs, and somehow evolved into reaching out to manufacturers to better understand what goes into their products. And somehow found myself consulting for manufacturers and industry trade associations to explain how their products impact human health and the environment. So now in one of my many roles, I have the opportunity to influence the identification and implementation of sustainable alternatives in building products. So my passion was help me develop my career and give someone of a unique position in that I play a role in many sides of sustainable building. Like I understand what the design professionals need to specify. I understand what the product construction teams need to select, and I understand what manufacturers need to do to address design and construction teams' demands for sustainable building products.
Yeah, I mean, I love the WELL building movement. I think post-pandemic, right, Brittany, we're hopefully getting back to the proactive wellness real estate and healthy buildings, not just the cleaning, the green cleaning and the air quality, which is still important, but let's get back to the living wall, circadian lighting, and just all the stuff that makes you feel good. And since we're spending so much time indoors, I know you have the FItwel Ambassador as well. So you went after both, right? Those are the two most popular programs, WELL and FItwel. Maybe in your region, are you seeing a little bit of WELL and FItwel activity? I mean, how's that going down there?
More so LEED, and there's a program called FGBC, or the Florida Green Building Coalition. Many cities within Florida consider Florida Green Building Coalition certification equivalent to LEED. So we do see projects pursuing either of those options here in South Florida.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, so let's talk present day. Tell us about where you're at, what's keeping you busy, what's a day in the life of look like for you?
Yeah, so I have many different job functions as a consultant, but what's gratifying to me is that every day is different. I recently developed a prototype for the certification of new warehouse projects under LEED version 4's core and shell rating system. Challenging yet thrilling experience. You're essentially developing a conceptual framework that will represent a group of projects that have similar design and construction elements, as well as quality control measures and tools. And you're also creating education plans for the project team to use when actually designing and constructing the building. So once the prototype is pre-certified, each volume project is built off of this prototype to simplify and streamline the LEED certification process. And it's a robust program to set up. And while you're using LEED standard, you're using that to develop the prototype, but then it's almost like you're creating a standard within a standard to address the actual volume projects and the client's needs. And with me, that takes the same old copying and pasting of the templates that we all create for LEED projects. You have to really think outside of the box and really think out the design and construction of a building prototype to apply to multiple buildings and multiple locations over the next 5+ years. Let's see, what else do I have going on? Also on the manufacturing side. So working with manufacturers to decarbonize their products and processes. That keeps me busy the most lately. Manufacturers play a significant role in decarbonization of a building, but I find that green building standards really rely on architects and contractors to educate the manufacturers when they're in the process of asking about product information. And in my opinion, there's a lot of miscommunication in that approach. So there's a need to inform and to educate manufacturers and their supply chains about what project teams need in order to decarbonize in the built environment. And I think a lot of manufacturers are all for making changes for the good, but unless they have a sustainability person keeping them informed of all of the sustainable changes that LEED and even governing body regulations are making, it's not their main focus. They're experts in other areas. So majority of the time, the first time that manufacturers are hearing about what's new in sustainability is when a customer is asking for information that they don't even know how to provide yet. And so there's the challenge of educating on both sides of product, right? So the design and construction side and then the manufacturing side. And manufacturers, I feel like they're just getting caught up with the changes that we made in LEED V4. And I see and I hear comments from design and construction teams, such as, great manufacturer, you finally have an EPD. Now, how are you optimizing your processes to reduce carbon emissions? Or, okay, you have a material ingredient report. Now, how are you reformulating to reduce or eliminate harmful chemicals? And it really does take time to develop EPDs and material and ingredient reports and all of the other bells and whistles that manufacturers are being asked for. And so it's been a fun process to figure out that side of the construction industry.
When it comes to all these different building types, Brittany, you get to work on. I mean, I'm looking at your bio here. I mean, over 150 sustainability projects, all different types of buildings. I mean, are there some that are, fun or challenging, a little more rewarding? I don't know. Which ones do you still really like working on?
I like what I talked about with the prototype development, where you're creating a standard within the standard, and that helps design and construction teams plan ahead for what they have to design and construct. But also projects that are kind of in, I'll call it crisis management mode. So project teams that ask for a sustainability consultant to come on either halfway through or towards the end of construction. And they're usually in panic mode thinking, oh no, we're not going to get LEED certification, and, working with them and educating them on what they selected as far as material product, how sustainable those are without even knowing it. Because there are so many manufacturers that are keeping up with the demand for various green product certifications and green building certifications, and boarding project teams for doing a good job and not really knowing about it. Those sorts of projects have been fun, challenging, and rewarding for me.
Love that. And one more question on materials, then we'll look to the future. I know you're real active, like you mentioned earlier, on some of the committees. To all of our listeners, if you're really making a career out of the green building movement, just, get involved with your trade organizations, even some of the technical advisory groups, and you really have a say in, how programs like LEED might evolve. I know you're active on the materials front. So tell us a little more about that. Where could someone maybe plug in if they're just really passionate about materials?
Yeah, there are tons of committees out there. I'm currently on the MR, Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group, the MR tag. That's been a fun one for materials. So preparing for LEED V5, I think I've been working on LEED projects in version 2. So I've seen a lot of changes, and maybe because there's still so many unknowns, but I think V5 is going to be challenging but necessary for sustainability. And it's a good time to be on that group, because I get to apply all of my knowledge and background with materials onto the new standard that would be coming out. But there's also groups like the Mindful Material. They are coming out with a common material framework, or they've already come out with it, and trying to make sure that manufacturers and the architects, engineers, and construction teams and owners are all asking and speaking the same sustainability language. And so being a part of that framework and developing that common materials framework has been a great experience to get more involved in learning more about materials and learning from different manufacturers, and as well as design and construction teams and even owners. We're all pursuing sustainability, whether it's pursuing LEED or being LEED-ish, trying to ask for the same things related to sustainability and making sure that manufacturers are able to provide that. It's been a great group to be a part of.
All right. That's where we can all plug in. Just more and more attention to all these materials. Definitely. LEED V5, you're right. I mean, I'm encouraged by it, but it's going to be some major changes. So everybody listening, hurrying past your LEED Green Associate, you probably got about a year and a half before the exams will change, but that's okay. All right. So let's look to the future. I love asking a green building professional like you, Brittany, about the future. What excites you? What are you reading up on? Or, hey, what's coming at us in this green building movement?
Yeah, I think, version 5, which we just talked about, USGBC just launched the draft of LEED version 5 for operations and maintenance. And LEED V5, BD+C should be out for public comment in early 2020. So that standard will focus on resiliency, human health and well-being. They have sections in there that are talking about creating environments that are diverse, equitable, and inclusive, and also supporting our ecosystem. Those are the principles within LEED version 5. And I think a big part of it, for me anyway, with my background and what I currently work on, embodied carbon emissions from building materials. That's what I see as being like where we're shifting to. And there's still a lot of unknowns on how to approach decarbonizing in the building construction industry, but we're looking at embodied carbon today and being concerned about what's being built today. And it's also about understanding of the materials that are going to a project right now and their impact long term. We can't stop building or manufacturing. So as a whole, we need to take a step back and learn how we can build better. And so I think there's increasingly more manufacturers and project teams that are adopting better processes. But I think, especially with LEED version 5 coming out, we'll see more and more growth in that embodied carbon area.
I agree. It's not just operating carbon, but we've got to get it right with embodied carbon, going back to not just healthy materials, but low carbon materials at all, just ties together. And just, where do you go to kind of read up on things? I mean, is it the USGBC site? Do you have some other places you like to go, or podcasts, or just your committees? Where do you like to get the latest information in our movement?
I get a lot of information from the committees that I'm on, and there's tons of education available on their. I think I told you this before, like GBEF. That's how I studied for all of my LEED exams, and being a part of these committees and learning from what others are doing, whether you're on the design and construction side or the manufacturing side. There's a wealth of knowledge out there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. No, we love helping everybody in this movement, everybody on the gbes.com team. So thank you for that. So let's get to know you a little bit more. What would you say is your specialty or gift?
My specialty. This might be a little outside of the box, but I'll say my specialty is my ability to make connections. I say that because everything is interconnected, and I've been able to make many connections from technical and strategy standpoint, but also connections with people. So whether it's project teams or manufacturers and suppliers, making those connections have really helped me in my career, and they've also helped others. So those connections have also allowed me to connect others based on their specialties or the goals that they're trying to achieve. I say, I don't know the answer, but I know so-and-so, and here's what they can bring to the table. Let's connect and brainstorm. Sustainability is a team sport. It's not the work of one sustainability expert, but rather the expertise of the project team. So over the last 2 decades, sustainability has fundamentally changed the design and construction industry. And that didn't happen overnight. It took a team of like-minded individuals working together, making connections, having a growing awareness of green building and those evolving green building standards, and learning how to create healthier and more sustainable buildings.
I love your passion here. That's really, I can tell you're right in the middle of it. You love it. I love it too. So thank you for that. And I would say that's a gift. How about good habits or routines or rituals? You got any of those?
Sure. Organization and attention to detail are key for me to function. I'm a big fan of a written, simple to-do list. I like to write things down and check them off. I start my week by writing my to-do list and my schedule for the week, and I feel accomplished when I can check things off my list. I'm also a big fan of OneNote. I like creating project pages with project information tables, having a central spot to reference all of my projects and these tables. It helps in the QC process, as well as making sure that project square footage, for example, is the same across all LEED credits. And also I use OneNote for writing standards and product development. So I have tables and tables with various products and their attributes and certifications and what they should have, and future planning strategies and goals. It's all found in my OneNote.
Yeah, OneNote's a very powerful tool. I know a lot of my colleagues use that as well. Now, how about bucket list? As we get to know each other more, you'll learn I'm a fan of a bucket list. Not everybody has a bucket list, but maybe there's something on yours. Do you have any adventure, travel? Do you want to write a book? What are a couple of things on the bucket list?
Well, now I want to write a book. That's something I would love to do one day, but I just don't know what I would do yet. But personally, I want to travel more. I love to immerse myself in different cultures and see different types of architecture, try different foods. I made it a goal to do a food tour on every trip I take. So I think it's a great way to meet people and try different things. And it's truly a small world. You never know the connections that you'll make or the resources you'll gain for future projects. And then professionally, I am determined to figure out whole building life cycle assessment. More and more clients are asking for how their products or even how their buildings impact the environment. So I would love to figure it out without having to go back to school or to figure out BIM or Revit, because she's not my background. But I want to be able to offer that as a service. And I want to be able to speak to not only what goes into a product from a healthier materials perspective, but also its impact on the environment and the building that it's in.
That's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah, they say everybody has a book in them. So let's both write a book. I've not done that yet. Just a few more questions here. This is fantastic. When we look at books or podcasts or documentaries, I don't know, I love to just ask for some pro tips. Any books you'd recommend to our audience here? It doesn't even have to be about buildings.
Sure. First, I'll say, I said before we jumped on this call here that I appreciate your podcast, and I've actually made a lot of connections through your podcast from the various backgrounds and the people you've interviewed. So thank you for that. And also, my favorite book, that's a tough question. I love reading. A favorite of mine, aptly named, The Storm of Creativity by Tina Lefke. I think it's a great book for both young and seasoned professionals. Also, Tina she's an architect. And so I think her approaches to creativity may resonate with a lot of your listeners too. So the book looks at the process of how something new or something creative is developed using a storm as a metaphor. So the process of being creative is like a storm. It gathers force and attention, and it continues in motion, and ultimately, like a storm, the creativity process is shaped by its conditions and takes form. And creativity in our approaches to an idea or challenge may be different, but the process of being creative is universal. We're all navigating this creative process to create something new or to discover something new. And the book is helpful for me in that it talks about unlearning to be more open-minded to others' ideas and approaches to better solve problems. And I think we all need to pause and take the time to gather evidence and make connections and then start again to get to the end goal. And it's an ongoing process. And I think sustainability is an ongoing process too. I'm a brainstormer, and I'm grateful for the connections that I've made over the years and the brainstorming sessions that I've had, or I'll say creative storm processes, as it's said in the book. But I've had a lot of connections over the years that have really shaped me and my approach to sustainability. Sustainability is ever changing, and we can't know it all. But when we take a step back and collaborate and research and start again, we can continue to grow what sustainability means and how we tackle the ever-changing and sometimes challenging world of sustainability.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to check that book out too. I like to put links to books, and all these recommendations in our podcast show notes. So to our listeners, make sure you always click into the podcast show notes. We got links to, for example, Brittany's LinkedIn and her company website, but also these books. So, Brittany, thank you for that. 2 more questions as we wind down. If you look back on your career, is there any career advice you wish you'd have known earlier?
Well, something I've learned in sustainability and that creative process I was just talking about was we need to listen. We need to listen and absorb as much as you can. And don't be afraid to share your ideas. If someone's new to the industry, that's okay. You're bringing a fresh perspective, and together with an experienced team member, we can start to create that keeps that creative storm moving that I was talking about. And also, I think we talked about it a little bit, but getting involved, make those connections. There are so many opportunities to get involved in sustainability. You can join a committee or an association that you're passionate about. And for me, as we were talking about, was being on a lot of materials committees. But you could start small, join a local AEC chapter or a USGBC chapter to start to build your network and your go-to connections. I'm still in contact with the people from the very first LEED project I worked on. We don't work together anymore, but we occasionally vent and brainstorm and share experiences that we've had to help each other grow. And then I would say lastly, for young and seasoned professionals, I advocate for including manufacturers as part of project teams and encourage others to do so as well. We cannot be expected to know every single building product and its sustainable attributes. Sustainability changes way too frequently, and therefore the product sustainability attributes and certifications most likely changed as well. So in addition to our existing workloads, green building standards are asking us to be toxicologists and life cycle assessors, and we can't do it all. So I certainly do try to do it all. But I do encourage project teams to work with manufacturers. Don't just ask them for their sustainability information. Educate them. Explain why you're asking. Then let them help you select the best product or products that make the most sense for your sustainability project. And I strongly believe that green building standards need to do a better job of educating or keeping manufacturers informed of what's being asked of them so that they can keep up with the growing demand for sustainable products. So like I said, I encourage project teams to push manufacturers and help them out as well.
Well said. And you are doing it all. So I can tell that, and I love it. Last question. So let's say you're inspiring someone that's listening. They're thinking they've been wanting to get into this green building movement. Maybe they're a young professional breaking out their career, or maybe there's someone that's doing a career pivot. Either way, Brittany, this green building movement, it's been good to you. It's been good to me. Let's say someone's jumping in right now. Do you have any words of encouragement for them as we come to a close?
Never stop learning. I think especially with sustainability, there is always something new. Again, you don't have to know it all, but if you find one thing that you're passionate about and you're passionate about continuing to learn and continuing to grow in that, speaks volumes because you become that go-to person that everyone would want to go to ask, to pick your brain about the thing that you are passionate about, and the thing that you know more so than maybe others on the project team. And you become that thought leader in that space. So I would never stop learning.
Never stop learning. I hope everybody's been inspired here. Make sure you connect with Brittany on LinkedIn. Let her know what you thought of this interview. And Brittany, I just want to say, hey, thank you for coming on the podcast, for doing all this amazing work in our green building and healthy building movement. And congrats on your LEED fellow.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.